Good evening. Today's April 1st. S&P 500 finally crossed 4,000. So it wasn't all April's Fool's Day. It was April's Bull's Day. S&P 500 was up 1.2% or 46 points. It was pretty much going up the whole day, as you could see on the chart, and has accelerated in the last couple of minutes. And we closed 14 points above 4,000 on the futures. Nasdaq was also up 1.8% after being up 1.6% yesterday, so up over 3% since Victor bought it 2 days. And Russell 2000 was up 1.5%. Gold was up and oil was up 3.5%. Even bonds were up. So like Victor say, everything was up today, except Bitcoin still cannot cross $60,000. It's
Yeah,
flirting.
don't finish that sentence.
Exactly. It's flirting with 60,000 for a third day straight and just can't cross it up.
That you can finish, but don't finish the other thing.
Yeah.
Don't finish the Baron Coleman day.
Yes. And CNBC the other day had a survey, and CNBC thinks that Bitcoin is the most crowded trade right now, according to their survey. So that means it's going to cross 60,000 over the long weekend. At least that's what I think should happen. Victor, what do you have for us today? Tomorrow, we're probably not having the podcast because it's a holiday weekend. So hope everybody has a fun holiday weekend.
Well, it's a day of great celebration. It's taken a long time to hit 4,000. It was bobbling around for a few. It hit 3,900 a month ago, and couldn't go up that extra 2% until today, and it was very courageous. I think it's a great tribute to capitalism that despite all the problems, despite the progressive, quote, progressiveness in the air, the tremendous increase in taxes. It's like Old Man River. It keeps rolling along. The stock market keeps rolling along, and what's the reason that it keeps rolling along? That when an individual buys stock, he's participating in the enterprise system. He's participating in all the infrastructure that's goes into a business, all the capital that they've spent, all the rates of return that they try to achieve. And businesses budgets for a 15 to 20% rate of return on all its capital expenditures. And when you buy a company, you're part of the massive $1 trillion of capital expenditures and knowledge and education that goes into the distribution system and factories and distribution and research. And so when you buy a stock, you're participating in the capitalist system. And despite the efforts, despite all the problems that it has, despite the deficit spending, despite the tax increases, despite the most important, the government's replacing of private sector activity with government spending and government activity, the complete reversing of the idea that it was more efficient to do things privately than publicly, which started with Hayek and von Mises after the Second World War, and yet with all the problems with the voting, the fact that if they can eliminate all the right to work laws, and 75% of all the kids have missed a year of in-person education. Stock market keeps rolling along, keeps 2,800 level to 4,000. It's up almost 8%, 9% on the year, and NASDAQ's beginning to roll around. And since the NASDAQ companies are the only ones that can really profit in a lockdown with above average results, since they can provide all their, the FANGs can provide the benefits in their activities and their products and their computer connections. They can provide it while the public stays in their homes and locks down, and despite all the fears of and the efforts of the FDA and CDC to engender fear in the public and another crisis, it keeps going up no matter what. So the main reason, of course, is that it's the rate of return of 15-20% is much higher than the 2.3% you can get on bonds. 15% will compound a lot more in 10 years than 2.3% power of compound interest. So it's a great day for celebration. And yet I posted something about it's a tremendous, shows tremendous resilience, shows tremendous ability to grow and to make capitalism work despite all the obstacles. I posted that. Most of the people posted back, the only reason it went up is because the Fed kept buying quantitative easing. They keep putting $2 billion in every $200 billion every month. They're buying the mortgages. So everybody still has a lot of bearishness in there. Now, in general, a big Thursday before employment is very bullish. However, we've reached a constructal number of 4,000. I wouldn't be surprised to see it bobble around now. Of course, it was the first day of the month. Those have traditionally been very bullish. It was very good last day of the month and the first day of the month. Here's a quote from H.L. Mencken, which is very, I mean, it's a very woke day. I mean, this $3 trillion spending bill has so many replacements of what could have been money for the public, and then that's money that we'll have to spend with with projects that customers wouldn't pay the price for. Here are some of the things in the bill. It's unbelievable. It's like a comic strip. They're going to upgrade child care facilities for $25 billion. They're going to weatherproof buildings for $27 billion. They're connecting disadvantaged neighborhoods for $20 billion. $100 billion for Amtrak. $200 billion in tax incentives for electric vehicles. There's very little construction for things like roads and bridges.
Yep.
All these will be union jobs. And
is there anything for voter ID? Because we have people who cannot get IDs. Is there anything about that in the bill?
Quite the contrary. The government continues their lashing out at Trump and their attempt to divide the country so that all things that aren't woke or are punished. They want to move the football
Oh, yeah.
from Atlanta. They want to take away all the things from Atlanta because Atlanta requires an ID to vote. I mean, there's no attempt at unity.
But Victor, if you're saying that all the woke news are bullish for the market, why do you care? Let's just have more woke news and more socialism, and the market's still going up, right?
Well, that's there are a lot of good people that are woke, and I guess when you think about what the future generations are and how they're going to have to pay this back, and what they could have done with the money rather than $2 trillion for projects like school public transportation, $85 billion, Amtrak, $80 billion, infrastructure resilience, $50 billion, public housing, $40 billion. I mean, all these things that have been shown to be vote buying, and weatherproofing buildings for $27 billion. I mean, ports and ferries, $17 billion. I mean, no, all the public transportation has generated revenues of 10% of 10% of the expenses, because people like to use their cars. They don't like to use public transportation. They want to get their cars, have the convenience of being in their cars. So eventually we're going to have to pay the price. But you ask a good question. I mean, if the stock market's a magical machine for wealth. As Larry said, it's magical, and the way the triumphal trio, or Biden, Dimson, Marsh, and Staunton pointed out 25 years ago, and they were very reluctant, but they had to say that at that time the stock market from the turn of the century had returned 30,000 fold. A dollar went to 30,000, but
So then,
now it's increased now. So I like to say that it goes up 50,000 fold a century.
so
And
shouldn't
within,
then our government sell more bonds and invest the money into the stock market, and thus will solve the deficit?
it doesn't work that way. The government spends money and it will have to be paid back, and it displaces private spending, which is what keeps the stock market going. But right now, it's it's back in its normal thing with the Nasdaq going up, and the professional sports, the unions, the educational system, the people that are receiving welfare. Everything has changed. We've gone back to the welfare without working, the thing that Clinton replaced. So you have to just be wondrous and cheerful that the stock market is able to surmount all these things. And I think that's really the main thing about, aside from the fact that usually the strong days before employment are very bullish for employment, and also the employment has a very high serial correlation. It was up about 1% last time, and that's been very bullish. And I have a quote of the day from H.L. Mencken, who was one of the people in the early 1900s who believed in that socialism was bad.
Do you think China is a socialist country or are they capitalist country? Because that issue always confuses me. China is somehow socialistic, yet they're running a market economy, capitalistic, and their stock market is also going up. So is socialism an issue or free markets, or where is this line?
Well, the one line is that the tax rate is 10% versus ours is going to go up to 40 or 50%. Why would a company
Every time
have its headquarters in China? They kill you if you come and you say you want more than 10-15% of their work product. They send a ninja after you, and the, in Asia, the people don't believe in giving 90%. That's why the ninja started in Japan, because the government would come along and they say, I want your sons to fight in the military, and I want 20-30% of your land, and the ninja was started to prevent that.
But every time the taxes were raised in US, the stock market went up. I'm not sure about every time, but most of the time the taxes are raised, the market goes up.
The market goes up regardless of,
Exactly.
but however, when taxes are reduced, the economy, there's a dynamic force that makes people work harder, and capital gains are higher. Here's the quote of the day. Will help you understand everything that comes out of government agencies, especially the FDA and the CDC and the Department of Education, and all the 4 million federal employees. Here it is. The whole aim of practical politics is to keep the populace alarmed and hence clamorous to be led to safety by menacing it with an endless series of hobgoblins, all of them imaginary. So that's why you hear nothing but crisis from Dr. Cattle and his colleagues, and
Well, speaking
they want what do they want? They want more power. They want to buy votes. They want the populace to be meek, individualism to be stamped out, so that they can buy votes. And it looks like there's with such unanimity among the Democrats, it's likely that there'll never be a Republican administration, especially if Trump tries to get back. And I attribute a lot of the problems now to Trump, but maybe things won't be as woke. Maybe, as I said, with taxes, all holders of stock are going to be punished by another. Their gains on stocks will be worth 10-20% less now with taxes going up. And of course, when they raise the taxes on corporations, eventually individuals get lower wages, or
well,
they pay higher prices. So
somebody was. Go ahead.
anyway, the bonds were way up today. The bonds are at a 10-day high and making all the unanimity about bonds going down, making them lose money. So yeah, I guess the start of a new month is always a time for standing on your heads, and it was pretty much the opposite today. NASDAQ was way up, gold was way up, and bonds were way up. And the only thing that was unusual is that the grains had a up limit day yesterday, and they were almost down limit today. That happens often. That one very shrewd grain trader was almost bankrupt. He's one of the biggest, and there's one day when, in those days, the limit on soybeans used to be up 30 cents, and there was a crop report that was very bullish. There weren't enough soybeans being planted, and the intentions were even less, to plant less in the future. So everybody was standing around in the pits. Hundreds of people were screaming, traders, limit up 30. And he said, I sell at 29 cents and up. And then since everybody else was bidding 30 cents, everybody rushed to take his 30 cent off, 29 cent offer. And he made back his fortune, he was almost in bankruptcy. And that's always a good thing to do when things get very unstable and uncertain, when they're limit up, as I say. They go limit up to protect the brokers from margin calls. What were you going to say, Selena?
I was just gonna make a quick point about the taxes, corporate taxes, that somebody was saying. If corporate taxes go up, the companies are more inclined to instead invest, instead of giving the money as dividends or profits. So to decrease the actual tax rate, the companies will likely invest more and thus create a more economic boom. So that's just.
No, I think that's specious reasoning. there are still the main purpose and the main goal of companies is to make profits.
But it really
But
is.
the more profits they make for their shareholders, the more the more incentives they have. Almost all the executives are compensated based upon how profitable they are. And capital expenditures don't reduce profits. They're a capital expense. That doesn't come off of profits, and there's no
Taxes, they reduce taxes.
there are certain investment tax credits that you get for capital gains, but there's still whatever incentives they had now. Taxes are going to be increased by as much as 50% higher, and
Well, Europe has,
that's going to eventually end up with higher. The consumers pay it. The public pays it. The corporations raise their prices. They reduce their wages. And
well, like Europe, they have high taxes, and people on average make less money in Europe, but the stock market still goes up, still goes up.
that's the name of the game. And as I mentioned,
Okay.
the Nikkei is still a little bit below 30,000. We've reached our constructal number of 4,000. And the Germans and the European stock markets are at their highs, and Nikkei is
29,388.
that still has 2% to go up to achieve the old goals of 3. So the next goal for the stock market is 5,000.
Speaking of Nikkei and speaking of Japan, the is an interesting chart I just put on a screen that Japan has pretty much the highest mask compliance, I would say, out of other countries. They were wearing masks on a daily basis even before COVID. So now the compliance is even higher. And yet, if you look at it, it doesn't matter how high the compliance is. COVID just doesn't care. The daily new cases go up and down together with the season, has nothing to do with compliance. And
In Japan, if they have 100 people who succumb to COVID out of 200 million, they consider it a tragedy. But everybody is so compliant and lawful and honest in Japan. And whenever a person you would think with the average age there of 150, you would think that they would have the highest death rate, but
just because they
they're
live.
very careful. And it doesn't matter what the incidence of testing positive for COVID is. It's a question of what the symptoms are and what the outcomes are. The number of deaths, the number of hospitalizations keeps declining, and the only reason you hear about all these hobgoblins and that Mencken was talking about is to create a crisis mode and to get the latest stimulus bill passed, and to get the voting rights bill passed. So everything's connected.
Right,
Look,
and same thing with
look, it's a celebratory day. Everybody should do whatever they like to celebrate. They should go out and have a great meal, and they should admire their partners, and they should have a gathering with their friends. Everybody's wealth is at an all-time high, and eventually that leads to spending, and things are it's much, despite all the hopes for the opposite, it's much better when the stock market is way up Everybody, there's a few 100 million that have most of their wealth in stock market. Real estate is up. Everything's up. It's a Baron Coleman start of the month now.
Yep.
We have to be careful that we don't bury it. Okay, thank you very much.